Jared, I don't think I've asked you, do you sleep well at night? Is there anything that keeps you up like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm worrying about this? Where, as you look at the obstacles for modernizing, is there one thing that, if you sleep peaceful, great. But what would be on your mind if you didn't?
I sleep very hard as a rock. My wife will tell you, she can't push me out of the bed, roll me over. You know, the things that I worry about are, you know, just on the uptake adoption piece, the cultural stuff I've mentioned already. You know, we have the leadership, we have the buy-in, people want it, and it's the change from doing things the old way to doing things the new way, and those growing pains. They're hard, they're difficult, people don't want to change the way they do things, and that's showing everyone the new way and teaching and the value. That is really, I think, where a lot of it keeps me up, and convincing HR to let us have their data so we can provide them with the analyses that they need to do a better job. You know, it's the difficult piece, but
knowing that you're going to do such a successful job, you know, at the end of the day for the institution in doing this, and that you're going to have multiple departments and multiple stakeholders relying on the data products that you build, are you concerned with the ability to support it and to scale it going forward?
you know, I was saying it earlier. You know, we being somewhat of a small shop, wearing a lot of hats. That is also, it's very, very difficult. We don't want to burn out, and so we have to start drawing, you know, lines and saying no and making it other people's pain. So, love the momentum, want to capitalize it, but need other folks, you know, screaming at the rooftops for us. We want this stuff, and we know Jared and Maria are drowning. Give them some help, and that's once you get a lot of people on board on the bus, then you know it's harder to stop that momentum.
Paul, anything keeping you awake at night?
No.
That's great.
No.
Anything that potentially could keep you awake that you think, you know, as a blocker, an obstacle?
I think like the biggest blocker, and this may not just be unique to kind of the financial services field, but the biggest blocker today is really just, I think, corporate or institutional inertia. And change is sometimes hard. I think it's probably magnified in highly regulated environments like banking. Change, you know, you guys have examiners and regulators that come in. I think Maria and I were talking earlier about, you know, agile versus the waterfall, like methodology of development and things like that. And it's just like, these are huge kind of cultural changes. I mean, literally you're talking about taking something like the daily dump from your, you know, Fiserv core that always sat in the Microsoft SQL server in the closet that only one person had a key to, and it was safe, right? And you're shifting that, saying, I'm gonna move this stuff up to the cloud. And everybody knows the promise, everybody understands what you can get from that, but then you really start thinking about, and it's come up multiple times today, and George, we were talking about this, HR data moving to the cloud, like the intransigence in some parts of the organization to forfeit, they feel like they're forfeiting the ownership or the stewardship of that data to move it to the cloud, when what they're really doing is they're adding this incredible facet of data that is, you know, one piece it's a vignette in a big mosaic. And so getting the culture and the kind of the inertia out of the way so that you can focus on the biggest picture and know that you can do this responsibly, you can do it safely, you can do it without being at, you know, any level of undue risk. And in fact, I would posit, when you do these things right, the next time the examiners are in and you've run your FFIEC CAT and you've gone, you know, on 15 different line level controls, you went from baseline to innovative because now you're doing things like automating access controls and tokenizing sensitive workloads and things like that all of a sudden makes your day-to-day a lot easier. And it puts you on a much more of a secure footing for really then trying to accomplish what we're all talking about, which is that customer 360 and enhanced experiences and just being relevant. That's what we're struggling with. We're just trying to stay relevant, right?
I guess over to you, James, same question.
I definitely don't sleep. I think you're obviously been hired on Monday, right? So that's going to take all your burden moving forward in support of what you're doing, right? That person gets all of it. I have a slightly different perspective, and I think it's in the same vein, but it's probably from a little bit of a different angle. I think some of the biggest challenge and the things that, as we talk about this technology and business connectivity that needs to happen, right? It's an awareness, right? So I worked in where I was the line of business owner connecting to hedge funds and asset managers and other pieces. And many people from that line of business and focused selling side, it's, oh, my relationship. Well, is it? Or is it the data and the tools that you're provided internally to provide value to that client, right? So if I'm working with a hedge fund or an asset manager, the insights that I'm pulling together is technology driven, harnessed and pulled together that allowed me to do my job in the way it was. But there was always a divide between someone they thought was a piece of the engine versus the value proposition of how it was delivered to me and what timeline and the accuracy and the quality thereof, right? So awareness of what technology is providing is one of the pieces of the bridge that has to be pulled together, right? And that's also, it's bi-directional. So I think many business owners, it's Jamie Dimon talking in his annual report, like they spend $14 billion a year in technology. 7 to keep the lights on, fly. And then 7 to innovate, right? So if you think about that, there's an awareness of the value proposition of data and technology to accelerate outcomes. It's the method by which productivity is created and by which profits are delivered, right? So I think it's essentializing technology to recognize during a higher cost of capital, that's how you get efficiency, it's technology, right? So I think from an awareness standpoint, that bi-directional conversation needs to happen so that when there is a demand, this is not just, tech is not a cost center, it's actually aligning you to your clients, right? And you're managing the risk of the firm better. And I think bridging that gap and discussing that framework is going to hopefully help conversations. And I know that's something that I try to do when I have these types of conversations with executives. But I think also it's coming back to what keeps us up at night. It's the idea of a strategy or lack thereof, right? Because the amount of data is not slowing. The quality of insights that might be gained from alternative data is not getting lower. This ocean of data, how do you harness it and utilize it, right? So in that light, so thinking of a strategy, what do I wish to use? What do I have today? Which do I wish to use to augment my strategy? And I think what we at Snowflake are trying to accomplish is, and this is not a sales pitch, it's really a simple foundational concept of stop moving data around, right? Move things from the administrative into enhanced decision intelligence, right? If you stop moving the data, you hopefully obviate the issues that surround inaccuracies, versioning, access control, some of the stuff from a compliance end that might exist. But it's really just a foundational simplicity of leaving data in place and permission access to it. So hopefully by that juncture, you free up, one of my first foundational principles is time and its scarcity, right? So if you can have more time, people start thinking about that ability from which to then do better member experience, do better customer experience, understand the footprint of your clients, and hopefully understand the risk of the bank than what you're taking already, because I feel highly confident. I have lots of friends who work in commercial real estate, including my 2 brothers, and some friends who are in the private equity space. There's likely to be another shock coming up as the maturity wall comes moving forward. So I think what that's going to recognize is there's been a flight to quality. So again, what keeps me up at night? There's, I don't want to keep quoting Jamie Dimon, but he's pretty damn good at what he does. I think of the lending, non-bank lending sometimes is somewhere between 60 to 75% of what goes on today, both in the securitized space. I think mortgage lending is around 62% done by non-banks. It's a shocking number. So if something happens in that sector, the flight to quality again is something we have to think about. So I hope that, and how do we then get past the challenge? I think it's a focused effort. And I think Jared said it very well. you can't boil the ocean. If you have a strategy, a cloud strategy that helps you scale, and you have a focused data strategy, maybe it's a 1, 3, or 5-year plan, what are the tangible pieces you wish to address in the next 3 to 6 months that are linked back to your members or protecting the risk of the firm? So, more on that later.
And Greg?
Yeah, I think I'll piggyback on what I was, my line of questioning with Jared in terms of what he was potentially concerned about as he starts to grow out this practice and starts to grow out more responsibility, more data sources, more reliance on the infrastructure that he's building. Because for me, while I sleep okay now, I still have moments of PTSD where I was concerned about the framework that I was supporting actually completing overnight, and that the business lines would actually have the information that they need the next morning so that they could do their jobs. So I think part of what this whole process should be as you start to think about modernization and building out a more robust, less brittle data infrastructure is making sure that you have the controls and processes in place and the visibility into how your infrastructure is performing. So having those tools is really going to be paramount in order to make sure that you're protected, the institution is protected from a risk standpoint, and that you have a line of communication with your business lines in order to make sure that change and issues are adequately addressed in a timely fashion.